going on? This is Matt from Patriots Corner. Now, big news. Got a special guest on the podcast show tonight. Former United States Navy SEAL that turns NASCAR, Mr. Taylor Canfield. Taylor, what's going on, brother?
Hey, how are you, brother? Good to be on, man, finally. After plenty of technical difficulties. So.
But, Taylor, we found a way to do it. I'm happy we did. Yes, after plenty of technical difficulties. But I'm pumped to have you on the show, man. You got a kick-ass story. I remember when we first were talking, because you're friends with Johnny Beltran, I know.
Yep.
And when John had put me in contact with you, and you started telling me your story, I was like, this is totally fucking awesome. From Navy SEAL to NASCAR, this is unreal. This is totally kick-ass.
I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it's you got a cool thing going. I like seeing successful stories of guys that have transitioned out, and so I like those types of media coverage and stuff like that. So it's always good to be on. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, it's an honor to have you on. So Taylor, I know with every awesome story, it definitely's got to start somewhere. And, with you going on to pursue a career as a Navy SEAL, where did that all start?
Oh, man. I probably have the worst story ever as how that started. It's not the sexy story that everyone likes to hear. Just being completely honest, I was in high school, and I've got one sister that's older than me by 2 years, and I watched her, go to start college, and took out student loans, and I watched that debt rack up, and it was one of those things where I said, I don't want that debt for something I'm not too excited to do in the first place. So my big plan was, hey, military pays for college. That's what I'm going to do. And that was literally my only plan, was join the military. I had no idea what branch, no idea what job I wanted to do. All I knew is I was going to go in there to, do the college degree, because that's what, society kind of says that you need. And that's, so that was my plan. My mom hated it. She, only saw what the news was putting out back in the early days of the war, and it was bad news for, a lot of the guys that went over there and never came back. So that's kind of really unfortunately what she saw. And so, we were at odds for a little while I was trying to decide what I was going to do, I suppose. But I had a buddy who was a year younger than me, and he came to school one day and was like, hey, man, you ever thought about being a Navy SEAL? And I'm like, no, to be honest with you, no, I have not. So he goes, yeah, you should check them out. And so, I went home, back up to the old dial-up internet, and listened to that great tone for a couple minutes and did my research. And then I came back the next day and said, hey, sounds good to me. That's what we're going to go for. And that was pretty much the end of it. And, so I don't have the cool legacy story that a lot of guys have. Like, my dad was, Master Chief of this team, or, just legacy guys that are like, yeah, my family's always done it, so that's what I was going to do. And, for me, I had both of my grandfathers served. One was Army for 3 years and one was Navy for 3 years. So it wasn't a big family tradition. Figured I'd give it a shot, and here I am.
Well, it's something how you say, like, it's not the wild and the sexy story, but I'll tell you what, man, putting a spin-off on it, just doing it off of that, you had to be 100%. Because I know, I've watched, a lot of the documentaries and read the novels. They refer to type A personality constantly all the time. And sure. I know, yeah, absolutely. You had to have had that already in you. I
You know,
mean,
I don't think I identified it. I'm sure it was there, but I, I was a pretty normal kid growing up. I had a lot of responsibilities growing up. I was the man of the house since I was 10, 11 years old. Everything that from lawn mowing to fixing air conditioner or whatever, that was my job. So I think that helped form my work ethic, I suppose. But and then I swam my entire life. I can't remember a day I wasn't swimming. Um, and it's funny because I was uh, forced into it, as a kid, and I remember hating going to swim practice, and lo and behold, it was a blessing in disguise because had I not, swam that entire time, I don't know if I would have been able to make it through training because it was pretty grueling. But um, yeah, I was pretty normal, kind of the gray man growing up. I wasn't in with any one specific group. I played football, I did swimming, did baseball for just a little while I was a kid. But yeah, I was kind of an everybody person. So um, yeah, it's just I don't think I identified it growing up, but I tell you what, once I actually signed on the dotted line and signed for the contract, it was sink or swim kind of thing, and that's when it really set in that I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and so out of two options, sink or swim, I chose to swim, and that's the end of what happened. So
that's so wild, man. And it's funny how you were saying, as far as having had swam your entire life, when you got to after signing your contract and you got to buds training, were you just like, oh shit?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, bro, dude, I showed up the first day, and I was at the very end. So I was like one of the last guys to show up for a class that was just about to start. And so all the other guys had already been there for, a week or two, maybe at max,
Oh
and
wow.
kind of had an idea what was going on, and I got there. Um, I think I flew in the night before. I stayed with my family members that were out in town, and they dropped me off at the next morning at like 4 a.m. And I had no idea like I showed up in my dress whites and everyone's in like, buds camis and stuff like that. I had no idea what was going on, and it was just, yeah, total shell shock. Like, oh man, what what have I done? And so it was steep learning curve, like drinking through a fire hose for the first, 24, 48 hours, and then yeah, you kind of fall into the buds routine after that, and turns out there was that class that I had arrived at the latter part for got full, so I ended up moving to the holding pot for the next class after that, and so then I started. I was like one of the first guys for that next class, basically, and so I had the routine down, and I watched the dudes filter in at the last minute for my class with the same look on their face, like, "Holy crap, what is going on? Like, what did I get myself into?" So, yeah, it was pretty funny.
What was that like? Even I mean, how you said you stayed with your family and then they dropped you off. Because I've never. I mean, what was going through your head then? Were you just like, were you nervous at all? Honestly,
Oh yeah, yeah. You nervous? You just show it. I suppose I tried to play it as cool as possible.
Damn, man. Oh my God. And once you got there, was it just a complete and utter shell shock, or I mean, how did it all kind of kick off?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had never lived outside of Colorado. I moved 2 houses in my entire life, and they were like 8 or 9 miles apart. So I grew up in my small town, stayed in my small town until I was 18, and so showing up in San Diego was my first, hey, I moved away from home. Oh, and also you're going through the hardest military training in the world at the same time. So yeah, it was no, definitely had my nerves on edge, but I think I kind of blocked a lot of that out just mentally, after, you know, everything that you learn going through training, the small stuff I think you end up forgetting, which it sucks because I'd like to, look back and think about some of those times. And I vaguely remember, some of those mornings that it's just pure and utter chaos, and that's the point of, the training is, the instructors want to make it as hectic and chaotic as possible to see how you perform under pressure. So, yeah, it was, once you get into phases, it's routine oriented, but when you first arrive and, the first day of each phase is always, just pure chaos. And it gets fun after a minute, after you recognize and what's going to happen. It's going to be chaotic. It kind of gets fun because, you get the fake motivation going and you just make it as fun as possible. But yeah, like the first day you show up and your first day of first phase is, yeah, it's super, super nerve wracking. I mean, there's dudes that can be calm as a clam on the outside and their, inside's going a million miles an hour. So.
Well, I remember when I interviewed a buddy of mine who has been on the show multiple times, Chris McKinley. I interviewed Chris a while back, and I remember he had said that there will be times where guys will have, shin splints like crazy. Their legs are fucking on fire, burning. But then, because is it true that there'll be, regular people sometimes on the beach that you're running on?
Oh yeah, I mean,
mainly chicks, babes.
Yes,
that's what he said.
That's a good, as you're running by them, it's a good 10 seconds to forget about where you're at. But
that's exactly how he said it too.
Reality will soon slap you in the face and bring you right back down to earth. Yeah, no, every beach that we run on is a public beach, so. Yeah, you're always running by, people out there having a good beach day. And, there's other times like you're out paddling in the ocean at night and it's freezing cold and you're just miserable. And there's some super nice condos that are kind of right in front of a main area where we train. And you can look up there and see people relaxing on their couch at night, thinking like, oh, God, they probably got the heater on. They're watching their favorite show. They're like, maybe I'll go to bed in 10 minutes. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll stay up and, have a snack or something. And you're like,
watch another episode of Friends. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just daydreaming it. And you're like, oh, man. You kind of take yourself out of the situation for a minute and find some serenity. And then a wave will come and, pour right down your shirt. And any warmth that you had is immediately taken away by the ocean. It's just... Man, it's humbling for sure. It's funny.
Now, when you're putting yourself through all, the hell and the stress and all the intense training, like you were saying how it got fun after a while, did you get to a certain point where you were just like, I'm not going to turn back now? I'm not...
Oh, yeah. There were, I had my point in Hell Week where I was definitely at my low, and I remember exactly where my feet were in the chow hall at the time. I remember the smells, like the people that were around me, like my low point. I remember every detail about it. But I think kind of my whole. So when I came in, I had a contract for buds straight from boot camp.
Okay.
And, they go in and out where sometimes they require you to go to a school first, gain a rating in the big Navy, so that if you do fail or quit buds, you have something to fall back on, and you go out into the big Navy and go to the job that you trained for before buds. Well, I came in during a phase where you can get a contract straight from boot camp. You have no fallback plan, basically. So if you quit or you fail out of buds, you will go to the needs of the Navy and probably be doing the worst job they could possibly find. Or, the job that nobody wants, that's what you're going to do. So you'd be what's referred to as undesignated. You have no rate, and you would just, we found a lot of guys that did end up quitting. The next day they'd be in the blue coveralls that are, indicative of big Navy, and they'd be literally scraping paint off the sidewalks and repainting the curbs red. And that was just like the worst thing you could, it doesn't sound bad. It's not a hard job, but it's, I guess the humiliation of it, because you're going to be out in sight of all your peers that you were just with the day before. And that was like my, when I first saw it, I'm like, I don't ever want to be there. It ain't happening. You're never going to find me in those coveralls. And that was kind of the, I'm not going back, period. It's the only way forward is that way. And it has a big gold trident at the end of it. So, but yeah, no, I had my low point during Hell Week where, man, it was, and it's funny too. When it happened, we were in the chow line. I think it was Tuesday of Hell Week. So maybe halfway through, maybe just before halfway, and at that point you're exhausted. You haven't slept, but maybe, 45 minutes at that point. And it was, then maybe you don't even want to go to sleep because you know how terrible the awakening is going to be. And the instructors make sure to make it terrible for you. But yeah, so you haven't slept. You're just dead tired. Your body's completely beat up. You're irritated with, the guys around you. You could have your best friend going, through buds with you, and you're just, man, there's no stopping the testosterone flowing through there, and you get in an argument with everybody. But it's expected, and, you just kind of brush it off and move along. But, yeah, we were in the chow line, and man, so the bell travels everywhere with you. It's, on your runs, it's hanging from the back of a truck that's driving in front of you the whole time. So it's always in sight, and it's always, the instructor's selling point. It's a very, cheap price to pay for some heat, your bed, and you go get dry clothes on. All you got to do is ring the bell, right? And we were going through the chow line, and I was just like, I'm crazy for doing this. Like, why am I doing this, And I looked at my class LPO at the time, who was right behind me. Still a friend. I need to reach out to him. I haven't talked to him in a while. Nino is his last name, but I looked at him. I'm like, dude, I was like, do you ever think about quitting? And it was one sentence he said to me, and it literally, that's all I needed. He goes, if you aren't thinking about quitting, there's something seriously wrong with you. And it was that point that it registered in my head. Every one of these guys is thinking the same thing I am. And it's who actually quits that separates everyone. If you actually move forward on your thought of why am I here? I shouldn't, there's no point in doing this when I can go be dry and have, warm clothes on and not be, wrecking my body anymore. And all you gotta do is go ring the bell. And so, yeah, that was my low point, man. And I'm thank God he said what he said to me, at that point. If it had been somebody different and they said a different sentence to me, I don't know. You never know the outcome, but I think everyone has a low point during buds. It doesn't have to be during Hell Week, but during buds, everyone has a low point, and you couldn't get through buds by yourself. If you were a one-man class, you wouldn't make it through. It's always a team effort, and I think at some point you always rely on somebody else to kind of pull you through a low point, and that taught me a pretty valuable lesson on doing my best not to judge people, off of, the cover, don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. So it was a big lesson learned for me. And, yeah, I mean, it was a good time. So I don't regret a second of it.
And do you feel that, once you had graduated and everything you were looking back on, was it, not to even to dramatize, but I mean, did you ever go back after graduation to the beach and just think back to all those times, through the hell and the stress and all the training, and just say, son of a gun, I mean, I did it. You know what I mean? I made it through. Because that had to just be like such an overwhelming feeling.
Yeah, and it's never a done process for me. I constantly, not by searching, but just by realization, I'm always learning from, my experiences in the past, and maybe it doesn't connect right away. Maybe it takes time, and, it takes two events for me to, put two and two together and make a full number at the end. But, I always seem to have some sort of a relation back to buds and my current and future endeavors. And I don't think it's always been, the end state for me that I'm like, oh yeah, I made it to the end. It's always, I look back and I'm pulling lessons from the entire adventure, which, makes it that much more valuable to me. Is, I'm learning stuff from, not just the beginning and the end, but everything that happened in the middle. So yeah, I mean, it was a cool thing to realize, and I think I had that moment of like, yeah, I made it, even though at the time, little do you know, you haven't really made anything. But at the end of Hell Week, when you graduate, or when you get secured from Hell Week, that was, I think, kind of that feeling that you're talking about, where you're just like, holy crap, I made it. Even though Hell Week means, I mean, it's a big deal at the time, but in the grand scheme of buds, Hell Week is just like that far in, and you have like, miles to go. So, yeah, I felt it then, and it's just a progression thing, I suppose. But yeah, no, it was a cool thing to feel. But the thing I look back more and value more is going through the whole process. You find the limits of the human brain, and then you push beyond that. And when you can feel that, when you feel your ability to push beyond what you thought was your breaking point, man, it is a crazy and just unworldly feeling. And I think I value that one the most out of everything. I value that, knowing how far I can push my mentality, because physically it's hard. God, it is very hard physically, but anyone can do it physically. It's the mental part of, the training that you've got to be able to commit yourself to and then push beyond. And it's the guys that can't get past that barrier of, hey, this is where my body stops. This is where my brain stops. I can't go any further. Of course you can. You just have to be able to push yourself beyond that. And the guys that graduate are the guys that have found the ability to push their mental state beyond the breaking point. And it was, I felt it on a run. It was, man, I think it was during first phase. good buddy of mine now, Ty Smith, was one of my instructors in first phase, and I was toast on a run, man. Just my body was done. I thought I had a second wind coming, and I didn't, and I was for sure behind the time. And he was leaning out the window of the truck, just yelling some motivating stuff. I don't remember what it was. Oh, you're almost back to the fob, kind of thing, And I just, man, I felt myself like break past this mental barrier, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm doing it all over again, and I'm actually like, I'm moving out. And it was just, it's hard to describe, man, but it was a great feeling, and that's by far one of my most valued moments I can pull from and rely on from buds. So,
and it's, how you even highlight how the feeling is. I totally get what you mean as far as feeling versus even belief. You know what I mean? I mean, anybody could go into something, I feel like, and believe about any type of accomplishment or even a negative. And that's something that I've often kind of thought about just with anything, is that feeling, it's how you were saying, it's almost unexplainable. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's insane. I mean, like, you get a feel, and the feeling's there, and it hits you, and it's literally like the only thing it sounds crazy, like a ramble, but just feeling something that is so that's incredible, man. Wow.
yeah, and I get probably 10, 15 messages a day on Instagram or whatever of guys that are aspiring, hey, how do I do it? Where should I start, kind of thing. And that's, what really pushes me to push them, is because I want them to feel that. And, the reality of it is not everyone's going to feel it. I wish everyone could feel it, but you got to be motivated to get there, because it's going to take everything you got plus more to get yourself there, and then just unworldly stuff to get you beyond. So, everyone's capable of it. It's just the people that are willing to push themselves to that point and beyond, that get to feel it. And I want everyone to feel it, but the reality is not everyone's going to feel it. So, I do my best to facilitate guys however I can, whatever information that they need, to get to that point. But, yeah, I mean, it just depends on the person. And I learned very quickly in first phase that you cannot judge somebody by their accolades, their past, their looks, on who's going to make it, because you never know, man. We had D1 college athletes, studs, people that when you get to buds and you're looking at them, you're like, damn, that guy's going to make it, and then 3 days into it, they're like, no, I'm out of here. And you're like, oh my God, if that guy rung out, like, what's in store for me? Like, how the hell am I going to do this? And then you look at the guy, the quiet guy, maybe he's smaller build, or, whatever, came from a different background, somebody you just never suspected, and they're just crushing it. And you're like, okay, so it's not what you expect when you get in there. And that's another great point that I love reflecting on, is, you never know what somebody's capable of until they're in that situation. And I do my best to facilitate guys to get themselves to that point, and then it's up to them. I tell them, I can't help you in that moment, in that time. I cannot help. You can reflect on words I've given you, but ultimately it's up to you mentally to break that barrier and just put yourself on the other side and be greatness. So it was yeah, I mean, it's a cool thing. Like you said, the feeling of it's just undescribable. You can do your best to describe it, but you'll never be able to put it into words. So
that's amazing, man. And it's definitely something that I really idolize, especially, within your guys' community, is that, I mean, even the short and sweet answer, if somebody was asking you how to do something, and if there was ever a short and sweet answer, of doing it and just going and like you said, breaking that barrier, it's, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You guys are you're born with something that is just that, fire that fuels everything. It's very, very kick-ass.
And I think everyone's got that fire, and it's just, some people just aren't motivated to feel it or to get to that point and realize, their potential. And I mean, it sucks for me to say that, but, there's, I'm not going to say very few. Everyone's got the potential. You just got to have that fire and that drive to unleash that potential. And it's not easy. Everyone thinks that, all these athletes got to where they're at, and it's, you don't see what goes on behind the curtain. You don't see, the struggles getting to that point. Unlocking greatness isn't easy, but it's totally worth it. I mean, it is the best purchase you will ever make in your life. When you're able to, motivate yourself to get to that point. And it takes a lot, but like I said, best purchase I've ever made. So I'll put it that way.
Right on. Hell yeah, man. Absolutely. And I mean, carrying on afterwards, one question I did want to ask, by the way, totally random, just because Shark Week was just on. Just because Shark Week was just on. What was I've heard in a few podcasts from a few of the guests I've had on the show about the wild and crazy Chum Swim. Or what was that like for you, man? At that point, were you just like, fuck it, if a shark is coming at me, he's dying. Yeah, or he's getting his ass kicked.
You say he's dying, or you just kind of accept your fate at that point. Because, I mean, when you realize, a shark's here, right? You're in their territory, brother. There ain't much you're going to do. It's funny because guys will like, that swim is, you're in full camis, you got a rucksack, it's at night, it's done late at night, they stick you in a classroom right before it and show you these brutal shark videos and all this other crap, and then, flip on the lights and they're like, get your ass in the water, and it's like 11 o'clock at night, you're out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on an island, and you're just like, oh, well, you know what, I'm gonna do this, like, you can't tell yourself you're not going to do it. You are going to do it. And, yeah, at that point, man, you got guys out there, like, they'll pull their knife out and they're swimming with their knife in their hand. I'm like, I just want to get it done, man. if a shark's coming, well, and it's my time, I'm going to take it. So, what's funny, though, is, I mean, geographically, where we do that swim is – no shit, it is a great white breeding ground. And you look at it and you're like, you're like, how is this possible? We've not yet, to my knowledge, we have not yet had a shark attack on a student. So, you'd like to think, oh, maybe if I stay in close to shore, but you look at Shark Week and they don't care if it's farther out or closer in, sharks are hungry. They're going to eat whatever's in the water. And you're just like, you know what? I got to do it. So let's get through it.
Is that like the only? I mean, I'm sure that's not the only type of predator. Did you ever come across anything where like, I don't know, man, like a alligator? I mean, a fucking crocodile or snakes, shit like that. I'm sure. I mean,
maybe some of the teams on the East Coast might, because they've got training up and down the East Coast, and Florida's full of those jerks. So not seals, but the gators. West Coast, wow, God, I don't think we might have some freshwater ones in a zoo, but most of our training is in terrible, dry, arid desert, and yeah, you got snakes and shit to worry about out there. And um, I can't imagine. I know we've had plenty of like scorpion stings and crap like that, which can be deadly, but generally aren't. Plus or minus a few classes, I didn't hear of any brutal snake bites. I'm sure that there's been some though. But as a student, you know that there's safety measures in place, but you kind of let that go away and everything else is kind of overwhelming. But after I got through and I became an instructor, you look and man, I mean, um, safety is definitely the number one priority going through. And there's a lot of measures in place to, if something did happen, generally we're going to get it taken care of before it escalates to anything, fatal. So, and again, it's part of the mentality, like if they got rid of that, I never heard it called the Chum Swim, but the shark swim or whatever you want to call it. If they got rid of that, man, I think you know, the vanity of looking in back on buds would just kind of start fading away. So I hope they never get rid of it because it was definitely an experience to be held close once you realize once you're done with it and you're like, holy crap, I'm still in one piece. I'm good to go. You're like, all right, I do it again.
That's insane. Oh my god, dude. Shit, that is. I had to ask that question, because we were watching Shark Week, and I instantly I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, I was like California. I was like, oh my god, man, that's insane. Holy
Yeah,
shit.
yeah. I think most guys just you can say you're going to try and defend yourself from a shark, but if they want to munch on you, they're going to do it. You're not gonna do much to stop them. So,
So after you graduated, what was next for you?
um, yeah, it was. There's a pretty laid out path for guys after graduation. You go to a team. You either go to one of the numbered teams, or you go to SEVs out in Hawaii, and you do a pretty typical progression through a few platoons, and get some experience under your belt and some leadership opportunities. And generally, after you deploy, so many times you've got an option to keep deploying. But it's taxing, no doubt it's taxing, especially guys with family and kids. Um, once you get the opportunity to go shore duty and do some instructor, and um, it's tough to say you're going to get more home time. You won't be gone for extended periods of time, months on end, but instructor duty still takes up a decent amount of time. And yeah, so generally guys will go and do a few platoons at a team or at SDVs, and then they'll come back on shore duty and do an instructor billet. And then, yeah, it's kind of that cycle until you get to where you want to be, or um, choose to move outside of the Navy and pursue something else like me. But yeah, I mean, it's nothing that's a secret for sure. There are some paths that you can choose that are unconventional if you really get into some of the secret squirrel stuff. You can go one path, and it's an unconventional path, but cool nonetheless. You learn all kinds of cool stuff. But yeah, no. So I went to a team and kind of did just that exact path. Did a few platoons, and then went to Tradet and became an instructor. And that was a lot of fun too. Once you get to see all the behind the scenes effort that goes into our training, especially some of the buds kids. So you get to go help out with hell weeks and stuff like that, which is always fun. I enjoyed motivating the guys that were going through, and you look at and they're just like it looks like somebody just killed their dog or whatever, and So you get to go and give them a little bit of motivation for, hopefully it gets them through the rest of the week or whatever. But, I had that instructor going through Hell Week, and I definitely, appreciated, their humor and, the quick moment away from the chaos, and you kind of chuckle for a minute, and then you get slapped right back in the face, back into the boat runs around the chow hall and how terrible it is. But yeah, so yeah, it was it was a good time. I learned more in those 10 years than I think. Well, I'm never done learning, and I can't say how much I'm going to learn or not learn in the future, but I appreciate everything that I went through and my ability to recognize lessons learned in that. And yeah, it's propelled me forward ever since. So
That's wild. And even in your career with what you're doing now, man, back onto to NASCAR.
yeah, dude, 100%.
I gotta
Again,
hear about that. That's totally it, Navy SEAL to NASCAR.
yeah.
Talk
So
about it.
that kind of NASCAR was me and my dad's pastime, and my father passed away when I was in Buds.
Oh wow.
So it was always something that was lingering in my mind. Like, he was just this giant gearhead. We always worked on cars, built crazy, wild, like unsafe, awesome cars that just get your adrenaline pumping. And NASCAR was his and mine pastime. We'd on weekends sit down and watch the race, or if they were local or whatever, we would do our best to get to a race. And it was, man, just so much fun. And finally, after I did my instructor duty and my reenlistment time was coming up, I still had 2 years left on my contract. But you got to start thinking about it then. You got to think about your future and what you want, where you want to be. And yeah, it just, man, it was playing on the back of my mind, and it was something I had to try. So I made the decision that at the 10-year mark, I was done signing contracts for the government and gonna go try my hand in NASCAR, and that's where we're at now. We're not too far into it, but it's been fun so far.
That's wild. Oh my gosh. So what do you do now for preparation? How does one even Taylor get involved with NASCAR?
um, there's a few options that you can do, but basically you start in a low series. So NASCAR's got a ton of series that you can do, and it goes everything from hometown little local tracks that do dirt racing, and you can race a $1,000 car in a NASCAR circuit, and that's kind of, you just slowly progress until you're comfortable and you want to move up to the next level if that's what you want to do. There's a ton of guys that stay in one series and just love to run that series, and that's their thing, and which is totally cool. But my place is at the very top, man. I'm shooting for the Cup Series, and I'll be there. I don't know how quick. It's going to be tough, but again, if there's one thing that Bud's taught me is perseverance. It's going to happen. So just a matter of time at this point.
Wow, that is incredible. Well, you definitely got the fan base behind you already. I know.
Yeah, and
I was gonna say NASCAR has to be like one of the most patriotic type fan groupings
dude,
ever.
it is. It's fantastic, and NASCAR fans are like you said, they're super patriotic. They're super loyal fans. I mean, there's statistics out saying NASCAR fans are exponentially more loyal. I think it's 10 times more loyal than a fan of a football player or something like that. So if that football player was endorsed by, I don't know, Reebok, and then a NASCAR person's endorsed by Reebok, the NASCAR fan is 10 times more likely to be brand loyal to their driver's sponsor than the other fan of football would be. So man, NASCAR fans are they're awesome. I love NASCAR. I love going to the race. I love talking to guys. And I love getting a NASCAR fan who is also, thinking about military or something like that. Cause I can help speak to both sides of that. And it's, fun being, a motivator role in that section. So
I forget the guy's name. I remember probably, I want to say like maybe 6 to 8 months ago, I was watching Fox News one morning, and they had a military. It was like a military appreciation race, I believe, that they had put on. It was involved with NASCAR. The guy had a bald head. I think he was in the Air Force, but oh shit, I forget what it was. I mean, regardless, but no, it goes with saying, you know what I mean? I mean, the NASCAR fan base is just full blown patriotic guys, 100% with it, and that's incredible, man. Well, when you're at the Cup, when you are at the Cup, which I know, yeah, that will be one hell of a ride because I will remember this podcast too.
yeah,
I
dude,
remember talking about it.
no doubt. I mean, my big goal behind my platform with NASCAR is so I founded a nonprofit that does adrenaline therapy for combat wounded guys, and I want to use NASCAR as a platform to help move this alternate form of therapy forward rather than man, the whole suicide epidemic was something that um, it affected me. We had buddies that were just, man, they got caught by it, and it's sad. And there's so much more we can be doing to help that. Granted, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but you can never have enough support coming from the outside in on a situation like that. So, my big goal is to progress this forward and make sure that, I'm using my, position in NASCAR as a position to benefit the guys that made me who I am. It's always, the saying, I'm no hero, but I had the pleasure of, walking beside a few. So that's kind of, where I'm at. And man, if I can help one guy, that's my goal, but I'd love to help 100 or 1,000 of them. So, that's kind of the big thing with, I guess, how I motivate myself is once I can get there, I can help, and not that I can't help them now. I definitely do everything I can to help now. So, but I'll have so much more ability to, progress this movement forward to, help bring these numbers down to zero because it's sad, man, guys. I can't speak to it. I wish I could. I do everything in my power to try and understand it better. But it's something that, touched me and I want to move forward with it. So that's, a big part of my motivators for making this a successful run.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that is something that is you know absolutely incredible with everything that you're doing and everything that you have done before, you're doing now, and is doing in the future is just absolutely awesome. It was an honor to have you on the show, Taylor.
Oh, dude, for sure. I mean, yeah, let's link back up and do this again once let me get a little bit further in my you know my current struggles here, and we can go off on the whole NASCAR tangent, and that's another big part of it is I want to show my fan base my journey, and that it's not just as easy as saying I want to race it and you go and do it. There's a lot of struggles, and um, anyone can do it. You got to motivate yourself and dig deep and find you know yourself and progress forward with it. So, I'm a normal person that's just doing, well, I wouldn't call it unnormal stuff, but the path less traveled, and I want more people to do that. And that's why I like sharing, my journey along the way, is to show people that, normal dude doing the same thing that, anybody else can be doing. And if I can give them a lesson to take to their own story, and it helps them, then hey, I've won for the day. So that's the goal, man. But yeah, let's get back together, do it all over again. We'll try and dive into the whole NASCAR piece for sure.
Right on, man. Absolutely. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for being on Patriots Corner podcast. One quote I want to even reiterate too, how you said in the beginning, like drinking through a fire hose. I love that quote,
yeah.
man. What is it? Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Dude, I tell you what, you gotta, especially in my case, there's most of the NASCAR drivers started when they were little, and they've slowly kind of graduated up, and I'm starting from when, they're pros at this point, and I'm complete amateur, and so you've got to learn to drink through a fire hose, and take it and go. And it's a big thing with a lot of, people are afraid to start new jobs, new careers, because they're afraid of the the unknown, what they don't know about it. But you got to take it on the chin, drink through your fire hose, and you'll be all right. You'll stay afloat. So.
Right on, man. Well, hey, Taylor, thanks so much for being on Patriots Corner podcast, man. Good luck with everything. We are going to be back on soon, guys. Taylor will be back to Patriots Corner. It's going to be totally awesome. But, man, thank you so much for guest starring.
Oh, dude, I appreciate you having me. It was a good time.
Right on, brother.